What's up, guys? This is Mike Parker at the Center for OCD and Anxiety in Pittsburgh, PA, and this is OCD Space, where we are trying to keep you updated on all things OCD. So today we got a very special video for you. I'm very excited about this one because I feel like it's a huge concept that spans all different versions of OCD and is a real reasoning issue to be aware of and to really get a handle on when you're struggling with OCD. Now, guys, if you like these videos, please be sure to like and subscribe below. That really helps us out. And with that all said, let's get started. All right, guys, we've got a big topic today. The reasoning issue I really want to raise awareness about today is something called blending. And blending is a very common reasoning trap that comes with OCD. And as with many OCD reasoning traps, it is the product of overgeneralizing and oversimplifying things. That is what OCD logic really comes down to, is this sort of idea of removing context, removing nuance from things, and just making blanket generalized statements and connections. And so blending is in line with that, because blending is basically when you take two concepts and completely link them together as being equal. And the problem is the two concepts are often not completely equal and require a lot more context than that. And as I'll show you kind of later in this video. But before we get to that, let's just talk about some examples of blending and see if you have ever yourself fallen into one of these traps. So if you look at all the different types of OCD, we've got obsessions around contamination, obsessions around health, obsessions around perfectionism, you could say, things like that. All these different forms of OCD can have different examples of blending. And so let's start with contamination. Some examples of blending with contamination would be things like, let's just say you develop a trigger of lead paint, and that becomes the big thing for you, just constantly making sure that you're not exposed to lead paint in any way, shape, or form. This obsession actually can be rooted in a blending situation where you have blended lead paint equals toxic. Okay, now that is a problem, because that blended statement has removed all context from the situation, because there's actually specific situations where lead paint is toxic, and there's specific situations where lead paint isn't toxic. So for example, there are many people currently living very healthy lives in houses that have lead paint in them. And the issue is that nothing is being disturbed in that house to cause any sort of exposure to the lead paint. So no one is sanding the walls. The lead paint is probably painted over by latex paint. And so there are specific contexts, right? If workers come in and work on a house where there's lead paint underneath the latex paint, and they start sanding things, they have to wear protective gear. They have to definitely make sure everybody in the house is protected from that dust that's suddenly in the air. And then, of course, if there's, exposed paint chips and there's a baby in the house that might actually be, just go up to those paint chips and pick them off the wall and eat them, then, that's a situation that's dangerous. But my point is, lead paint does not equal toxic. Lead paint in a specific situation equals toxic. And really what we're talking about there is when it's actually in the air and when it is at risk of being congested, right? Ingested, is that the word? Something consumed, ingested, breathed in, eaten, things like that. That's when that's toxic. So really we're looking at the idea that when you've linked lead paint and toxic unequivocally in your mind, and those things are just completely linked as equal, that is the basis of a future obsession, a big problem that you're going to have to deal with. And it really is rooted in that reasoning mistake of linking those two things together. So, this happens in all kinds of areas where you might look at where you may have linked headache equals brain tumor. A headache in a very specific context that comes along with a lot of different things, including an MRI and a doctor's diagnosis would equal a brain tumor. A headache by itself does not equal a brain tumor. A headache is either just a headache, or it is something that, if it were to be accompanied by a bunch of other things, it could be one of probably 1,000 different diagnoses, right? Depending on what is actually going on, depending on what the context is. And so, those are two examples of blending. I'm going to keep going here though, because I want to get some of these examples out for you guys so you can really start to recognize this. If you are struggling with a sexual obsession, so you're trying to figure out what is my sexual orientation, right? When you start obsessing about that can be rooted in blending, right? And so, for example, one of the things you might blend in your mind is attraction equals desire. Right? And those things should never be 100% linked as equal. They are two completely separate things. You can find someone attractive, and that does not equal desire, right? Desire would be attraction accompanied by an inner kind of sense of you actually wanting to be with that person. Right, and then that would be evidenced by having actual plans to try to ask someone out or form a life with someone, right? So if you've just got the attraction, oh, that's an attractive person, and you don't have all the other stuff, that is just attraction. That is not desire, which would be something that would be more associated with a specific sexual orientation or a specific sexual preference. And so you have to be careful where you've kind of linked those two things, and then suddenly you're wondering, gosh, what is my preference? What is my desire? And you're looking at things like, who am I attracted to try to figure that out. That is not going to help you, because attraction, as I said, does not equal desire. And so another obsession would be when you have what they call P-OCD. That's when you're scared, like, am I attracted to people that are too young? I'm going to be careful with my words, because I know YouTube likes to, drop videos when they're using certain words. So, but if you're worried, oh, could I be one of those people that's attracted or desires, people that are too young, those little creatures in the world, that is something that can be rooted in blending as well, where you've, suddenly trying to figure out, like, oh my gosh, I thought that kid was cute. What does that mean, right? That means absolutely nothing. Kids are cute, and that does not equal desire. And so when you've gotten caught up in an obsession like this, watch out for the ways that you have blended things that should be not blended. Those should not be equal. A couple other examples, let's see here. So when someone is kind of presenting with like a a perfectionistic kind of OCD, and you're redoing your homework, checking your homework, color coding things, rewriting your notes, and studying. So you've gotten involved in this situation where you're just like doing all these rituals around your schoolwork. You may have blended some things like checking your homework equals good student, checking homework equals responsible, right? No, those things should not be equal. You should not be checking your homework and rechecking in an attempt to make sure you are a good student. A good student does an ample amount of work, completes their assignments, and then, at some point leaves it up to fate, right? I've studied enough, I've done enough work, I have checked my work enough, and now I just hand it in. But, when you're thinking, oh, checking and rechecking equals good student, and you've linked those two things and you've blended, it never ends, because you can always check and recheck. So noticing how you've blended different behaviors with different concepts, and realizing those things should not be equal. This could be very similar to, picking up litter equals being responsible, right? Picking up litter occasionally, in certain contexts means you're a responsible person, but you can also walk by a piece of litter when you don't have time or, the mental bandwidth to pick it up, and you need to keep going where you're going, right? You can pass by a piece of litter and still be a responsible person and still be someone who cares about the environment. You've linked picking up litter with responsible, with environmental. And likewise, sometimes you've linked the opposite, right? Not picking up litter equals irresponsible. Not picking up litter equals not caring about the environment. And so you're stuck in this blended logic. All right, so I hope that's enough examples to get this point across, guys. This is so huge, and like I said, I'm so excited to share this because I am learning about these things, and I'm getting excited about them, and I'm sharing them with clients and all of you. I think it's so clarifying to see how this blending thing plays a big role in that OCD logic. And now, the answer is also kind of cool too, which is de-blending. How do I start to de-blend these two concepts? And it is really about starting to add context, starting to require context, right? If you've decided that dirty means a certain thing, or clean means a certain thing, or responsible means a certain thing, or good means a certain thing, and it's linked, we've got to start to de-blend that, right? So, let's say sterile equals clean in your mind, right? And to the point where, you've now, or let's just say sterile equals safe, right? That might be another thing you're thinking. These are things that require very specific contexts, right? And we want to de-blend them by adding that context. So sterile equals safe in a hospital. Sterile equals safe in a doctor's office where we have open wounds. And the sterile environment is very important for that kind of situation where you can't let anything into that open wound. Sterile in a hospital is safe, right? But sterile in your life, actually, for the most part in that context, is unsafe. Sterile environments do not give your immune system enough of a challenge to actually develop. So sterile in some situations is great, sterile in other situations is awful. And that's where you start to actually de-blend. Add the context. When is picking up litter a good thing for you, and when is it something that's fine to not do? When is checking your homework good, and when is it like, no, now it's like getting out of control, that's not required for me anymore, and I'm still a good student. Starting to add context, right? When I've checked my homework once, which is probably a responsible thing to do. Let me just make sure I didn't, make any mistakes or whatever. You've done your due diligence, right? Checking and rechecking and rechecking and rechecking, that is not responsible. That is actually being not good to yourself. That's making you mentally exhausted. That's taking away from time for you to find full success in life, where you could be doing other things in addition to your homework. And so realizing that these concepts have to be de-blended, and you have to add context, and you have to add nuance to your logic in the area of your obsession. Now guys, keep in mind, you are capable of doing this. You may have OCD, but you have nuance and context in all other areas of your life other than your obsession. You are fully capable of using your common sense and your logic to think about things in a complicated, nuanced way. And you want to activate that logic that you have in the area of your obsession. Now, is de-blending the answer, the cure to OCD? Absolutely not. It is just a piece of the puzzle. So guys, if you have really taken to this concept and found it to be helpful, start to log this in your goals, right? Let me start to look at the ways that I'm using this blended logic in the area of my obsession, and let me de-blend in that area. That is just going to be one more piece of this puzzle as far as overcoming OCD. All right, guys, hope this was helpful. Again, I love this concept. It's very helpful. It's the language we need to understand things. And if you guys like this, again, like and subscribe. That's really helping us out. And until next time, trust yourselves and take care, guys.